Feels like a while ago that I did an interview, but I'm back again and I'm looking forward to this one. It's 40 years since Phil Anderson became the first Australian to lead the Tour de France. And we've known each other a little while, but I'm pretty excited just to have a chat about what happened back in 1981 when he was part of the Peugeot team. If you don't know Phil Anderson, then you don't know a lot about Australian cycling history, because he's basically one of the forefathers of the international cycling game. In other words, he took a gamble in his youth, set off for the ACBB for a team in France, and then scored himself a pro contract, and off he went on a career that set many precedents. Here he is. No, maybe.
Are you there, mate? Can you see me? Can you hear me?
I can hear you, and it feels like old times. I see you've come dressed well in your best flannelette. Is that right?
That's right, mate. It's winter down here. COVID-free, but it is winter down here, Victoria, mate.
Okay. So I just introduced you saying you might be at Apollo Bay. Am I years ago?
No, that's that's pretty close. Yeah, near Lorne. Possibly closer to Lorne than Apollo Bay, but yeah, down the southwest coast.
Well, I thought I would just reminisce on some topics that you and I covered probably back in the 90s. I think it's today or tomorrow is the 40th anniversary of you becoming the first Aussie to lead the Tour de France. I don't remember the specific date. I was only 11 at the time. But do you sort of hark back to the days of 1981 Tour de France very often?
Well, people always want to bang on about it. So, obviously there was a bit of discussion about it. Yeah, but I mean, people always want to know about, the yellow jersey and the first Australian and, just, leading the biggest race in the world. And so, I possibly end up talking about it, not every day, but, at least 2 or 3 times a week. I mean, not solely about that particular tour, but about the Tour de France, and but it always does reference back to the, again, the yellow jersey. Not something which is so unique.
Should we do it one more time? Is that okay? Can we try and eke out some new recollections, or have you told them all 100 million times before? And from that introduction that you just gave me, then are you absolutely fed up with talking about it?
No, not really. I mean, it's it's interesting listening to other people's views. Like, you were 11 at that time, and listening to the story about when you were a kid, or if you were interested, how you got to end up hearing about it. But for me, it was my job, and it was the progression of my career, I guess. So my first year as a pro, I didn't get to do the tour, but I wasn't particularly fussed about it because I was still very young, and the teams wanted to nurture their riders somewhat even back then. I was ready to do it, I guess, excited, didn't really know what to expect. Not different than now when you can follow it on television, of course, but you can, with social media, you can basically read about the rider's thoughts during an event, let alone watch the vision of what's going on. So I think the public are a lot more educated about the tour now than back then. So it was such an alien sort of experience that I was involved with.
I wonder, just for people who are new to cycling or have come to cycling in the last 40 years and they weren't aware of what happened in 1981, can you talk through the sequence? It was stage 3, where you took the yellow jersey and then you had a time trial the next day or something like that. Could you just sort of talk through the sequence if you've practiced that so often before?
Yeah, well, it was the 81 Tour de France, and so it started in Nice that particular year with a prologue. Stage 4, I believe, was a team time trial. Start and finish in Carcassonne, down the sort of south on the foot of the Pyrenees. And the Peugeot team, which I was a part of, we got second. I believe it was the rally team who won the team time trial. I think there were 8 riders per team in the 81 Tour. So TI Rally riders filled the top 8 top places, and the Peugeot team went into stage 5. Riders 9 through until 15, or what it was, were Peugeot riders. So I jumped from the last page up into the first page of results due to our good team time trial. So stage 5 was going to be a mountain stage. We had Jean-René Bernaudeau on the team, French rider who was, basically a lieutenant of Bernard Hinault's previously, and Peugeot had gone out, hired him for our team to be the leader of the Peugeot team. So our job was to look after Jean-René. Like, I'd never ridden the mountains really, so I'd ridden the Dandenongs here in Melbourne. I'd ridden the Adelaide Hills, but I'd never really gone into the mountains, let alone the high mountains. So I didn't really know what to expect, but I noticed the pace was getting faster and faster. And, we didn't have radios or anything like that back then, but, it was no secret we're going to be hitting our first mountain top, quarter of the way into the stage. After 50 kilometres, we're going to be hitting the base of the first mountain. So the pace was getting faster and faster. And, I was yelling out to my teammates, "Where's this bloody mountain?" I'm trying to look up the road to see. I couldn't see any mountains yet, and they were meant to happen pretty soon. So, my teammate said, "No, you got to look up." So I looked up into the clouds, and there you could see these lofty peaks sort of poking out above the clouds. So all of a sudden, I had that shiver of fear. What was about to happen. So I turned to right, and I was like in the back. And I just remember, once things settled down on this climb, it was going to be like a 15-kilometre climb. I don't know if it was Puri-Sud or wasn't the Aspin. I think the Aspin was like, the penultimate climb. But anyway, like a heap of, not huge mountains. It wasn't the Orbis, wasn't the Tourmalet or anything like that. But anyway, it was hard for me. I mean, I'd never seen anything like this, and but I noticed there was riders leaving gaps, and I was leapfrogging riders along the route, and by the time we got to the top of the first climb, there was only like 100 riders left. Like, the field just split in half. Now, I'd never ridden the mountains before, as I said. I'd never seen this phenomenon before. There weren't any Aussies in the field, so I couldn't measure myself against any guys I knew, really. Crazy descent down to the valley floor, and then we hit our second climb, and that was pretty much the same. Riders were getting shelled and having trouble finding position coming into it. But as soon as we got on the climb, I found I was making my way through the field and ended up, reasonably close to the front of what was remaining of the riders. Only about 50 riders left. Another crazy descent, penultimate climb. As I said, I think it was the Aspin. It wasn't long after the start of the climb, and I hear my director coming up to me in the car. So the team cars had, a different sort of musical tune they played on their klaxon, and their horn. That was the way you knew your director was coming up before radios. And anyway, I knew Maurice Demure, my director, was coming up. So I dropped over to the side, and he comes up beside me and he says, "Philippe, where's Jean-René?" The field was getting pretty thin. I looked around, I could easily see that Jean-René, our humble leader, wasn't there. And so I told him, "Oh, bugger, yeah, I overlooked that. I was involved with, trying to look after myself here. It wasn't a very good ploy. I wasn't looking after Jean-René. He must be, just at the back. I did see him on the last climb. I'll drop back. I'm pretty buggered anyway. I can have a bit of an ease up a bit." And he said, no, he's 2 groups back. He's like 5 or 10 minutes behind. You stay there, but you're doing well, but you come and see me tonight. There was a plan and you didn't follow it, but, so, oh, geez, I haven't been told off by a director before. So anyway, I just sort of follow the wheels, and, we get to the top, and I start recognizing some of the riders around me, riders who are, past winners and heroes of mine. I had posters of these guys on my wall. I'd never been with such a salubrious collection of riders. We had Lucien Van Impe there. We had Thevenet was there, Hinault was there, Quickly On and guys like that, more contemporaries were there. Went crazy down the last descent and to the foot of the last climb. Lucien Van Impe takes off. Everybody sort of looked at me like I was the newbie. I'm going to be the guy that chases down, this guy that, just rides like he's got bloody wings on his back up a mountain. I wasn't going to chase him, and there's a bit of a flurry of attacks and I'm struggling to stay with them. I mean, there's only like 15 riders left, and with every attack, a couple of them all get shelled and I'm just sort of grimming, just hanging on by the skin of my teeth. Hinault was continually attacking and, I sort of struggled up to him. And
the upshot is that you sort of went against team orders and then got the yellow jersey and said a bit of history. And afterwards, did the DS come and give you a lecture, or did he come and give you a pat on the back and say thanks very much?
Yeah, no, the director was happy. He would have preferred it was a Frenchman, but anyway, some upstart Aussie, and how it sort of unraveled by the end of the Tour de France. Quite a following, and even the French took a liking to me, the fact that I was challenging Bernard Hinault, who, as many viewers would know his reputation of kind of being arrogant and big-headed and some upstart from Aussie. I didn't know who Hinault was, or didn't have that sort of, the heritage or the history of being involved in the sport. And, so for me, I just did what I could to, claw back time over the next, 2.5 weeks. The next day was a time trial, and I'd ridden a few time trials. I think I even won a Peninsula 3-day tour time trial down here in Victoria. But, it was my first Tour de France time trial. It was Pau, I think it was Pau. So it wasn't that long. It was like 25 kilometers, same distance as the Victorian Junior Time Trial Championship, which I won a few years ago, a few years prior to this Tour de France, and I won it by 1 second. But anyway, this is my first Tour de France time trial, and they talk about the power that wearing the yellow jersey gives you, and my first Tour de France time trial, I got third, so that was behind Kneedemann and Bernard Hinault. So. So anyway, that was a good result, and obviously backed up the ride that I did the day before.
The reaction from first of all from the French public, and then secondly from the Euro press, because there wouldn't have been any Australians reporting on it. How did you feel? Did it feel like you'd sort of turned into this sporting anomaly, or?
I wouldn't say. I didn't realise the enormity of it at that stage. I mean, possibly here we are now, 40 years. You keep banging on. Thanks for reminding me. But I think I still am coming to grips with how big that was, and you see the riders over there now, and the Australian riders, and how they're doing, and I guess that kind of reinforces. What I did over there, many decades ago. Back then, for a non-European to get the yellow jersey in the Tour de France and their tour, it was crazy. It was like I could have been from Mars. It was crazy, getting dragged here and there, and then they flew us off the mountain in a helicopter down to where the teams were waiting. It was bizarre. It was the first time at the top of a big mountain, and I get in the yellow jersey, and all this, the media, and there was no Australian media then. There were some that came in the following days, because, the Tour de France usually follows, the week after Wimbledon. So, there were a few Aussies that must have been instructed that, there's some kid from Hawthorn that's got the yellow jersey in the Tour. You want to go over and get a few words from him. So, there were a couple of Aussies that came over. It was very exciting, something I certainly didn't go into the Tour expecting. I mean, I didn't know what to expect at the Tour. I didn't really, the French riders in the team were making a big fuss about the Tour de France, and they all were sort of fighting to try and get onto the A team, which made the Tour cut. For me, I wanted to do the Tour, but it wasn't like, pick me, pick me, pick me.
I basically have only seen a few images of you in the yellow jersey in 81. I haven't seen much footage, maybe once or twice over the years when I've been in France, they've shown that as a highlights reel. But the camera sometimes, but it doesn't give you the full understanding of the physique. In other words, sometimes bike riders can look bigger in a picture or smaller in a picture. But from the images that I've seen of you in 1981, you were quite a large rider. Can you remember back in your formative years what you weighed and how you ended up in the top 10 of your debut Tour de France?
Certainly in comparison with riders now, but I think if you look at the riders in the field back then, I was pretty average size for a, even for general classification riding. As I matured as a professional, I did get heavier, but that was mostly muscle. I think when I started, I was about 73. By the time I retired, it was 78. I don't know if you've ever picked up a bike from the 80s or even the 70s. They were bloody heavy. So I figure the riders had to be bigger to push those heavy bikes with big gears up the mountains.
If we look at the gears, you probably had a 5-speed at the back, and you probably had a 52, 43 at the front. I don't even, but it would have been, in other words, you weren't just doing high cadence, you were doing brute force.
They didn't have anything smaller than a 42 when I began, and they were 6-speed on the back, so a 12-speed bike. So most of us used 42, 53. The time trial bike, you might have a 54 or something like that, and you might have a bigger small ring in a time trial, depending if it's hilly or not.
Mark Renshaw told me a story. He was laughed at by his director when he asked in 2008 or 9 if he could have a 25 for the mountains on the back. You wouldn't have gone near that. You would have had a 21 as the easiest gear, wouldn't you?
23 maybe. 23, 42, 23 is what we used going up the Mur in Tour of Flanders, or going up the Koppenberg and things like that. So you'd imagine the cadence would be like 40 or 50, and you're right. You're pushing over huge watts just to keep the thing going, and in the longer mountains. So obviously you're pushing those gears, those bikes. We were all a bit bigger. You had to be stronger. Like now, I push tiny gears. I resisted for a while, but I remember when I first went to a compact, I only went out alone. I didn't want anybody seeing me using a 36 or something. I think now I have a 34, 33 or something. And, I have pretty much the same on the back as it's 33 or something. So totally different. But, and I'm possibly not that much heavier than when I retired. I reckon I'm 78, 79 now. So maybe 1 kilo heavier.
Well, thanks for the time, Phil. That was great. It's good to catch up.
Yeah, good on you, Rob.
See ya. Bye.
Bye now.